For 1,000 years, the Galactic Federation knew only war. A solid millennium of our finest warriors, our most brilliant strategists, and our most advanced technology all shattered against the relentless tide of the Scourge. We lost trillions of lives. We lost countless worlds. The history of the modern galaxy wasn't written in ink. It was written in blood and ash, and then there was him, a single human. Clad in scavenged, scorched armor, he had the audacity to stand before the Council of 1,000 Worlds, drop the head of a god at their feet, and say, "So, can we get this over with?" I'm tired to understand the silence that fell over the Grand Conclave in that moment, that profound, galaxy-spanning quiet. You first have to understand the noise of the last 1,000 years. It wasn't the glorious sound of battle you might be picturing. It was the sound of screams, the sound of planetary defense grids failing, the sound of fleets being torn apart like paper. It was the sound of a final, hopeless broadcast from a world just before it went dark forever. We called them the Scourge. A more poetic species, the Lumina, called them the Gorgons, because to gaze upon their fleets was to turn a civilization to stone. They weren't an empire looking to conquer. They didn't want territory or resources in any way. We understood. They were a biological plague. A swarm that moved from system to consume, convert, and grow. A world touched by the Scourge was lost. Its life was twisted into monstrous new ships, its molten core forged into a new hatchery. They were a plague that had turned a quarter of our galaxy into a dead zone of unspeakable horrors. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Federation, a coalition of the oldest and most powerful species in the universe, fought back. My own people, the Xylar, sent in our Praetorian Guard, warriors genetically perfected for combat over 10,000 generations. They fell. The cybernetic Klothar, beings of pure logic, ran 10 million battle simulations. Not a single one predicted victory. Their cold conclusion was that the war couldn't be won. It could only be managed. A strategic retreat across the galaxy until there was nowhere left to run. This became our reality. The Scourge was a force of nature, like a supernova or a black hole. You could try to mitigate the damage, but you couldn't stop it. You certainly couldn't kill it. We believed there was no head to cut from this snake. The Scourge was the snake. The war had lasted so long, it was no longer an emergency. It was just a state of being. We were born into it, we fought in it, and we died in it. Hope was a resource more scarce than any rare isotope, and then, about 80 years ago, we found the humans. A scout ship, crippled by a Scourge patrol, limped into our space. It was a relic. Its fission and chemical propulsion was so crude we almost dismissed it as junk. Aboard was a small crew of bipedal mammals. They were unimpressive. They were soft, fleshy, fragile, and so emotionally volatile. Their lifespan was a cosmic joke, a flash of consciousness compared to the centuries most Federation species enjoyed. As a xenosociologist, I was at the forefront of studying them. Our conclusion was unanimous. They were a young, non-threatening species. Their tech was brute force, their biology was weak, and their societies were pure chaos. We granted them probationary membership out of pity and confined them to a few star systems we'd already written off as lost causes. They were a footnote in the grand, tragic history we were writing. That's where JAX came from. His full name was apparently Jackson, a sound as blunt as his species. He wasn't a soldier. He was just the sole survivor of a freighter caught in a Scourge attack. When we picked him up, he was different. Not from other humans, but from what we expected of someone staring down the end of the universe. He just wasn't properly terrified. We had all learned a deep, logical fear of the Scourge. It was a sign of sanity. JAX had a disturbing lack of it. He'd sit in the archives, watching tactical replays of our greatest military disasters with a look of irritation. Not sorrow, not fear. Irritation. Like he was watching someone make obvious, stupid mistakes in a game. He asked questions. Simple, almost childish questions that we dismissed. Why do they always retreat after consuming a world? He'd ask. They're consolidating, our strategists would reply condescendingly. Why are their patrol patterns so predictable? It's the optimal energy-saving formation, our logicians would explain. We saw a force of nature. He saw patterns. We saw an unstoppable tide. He saw an army with a supply line. We saw a hive mind. He saw a chain of command. We, the ancient, wise races of the galaxy, saw a problem with no solution. He, the short-lived chaotic primate, saw a simple one. One day, he walked into a mid-level strategy meeting. He wasn't supposed to be there, of course, but humans have a way of just ending up in places. A Qatar admiral was presenting a new model that predicted we'd lose another 17 star systems. The mood was grim, resigned. It was the same meeting we'd had 100 times. JAX cleared his throat. The sound was jarring. The Admiral focused its optical sensors on him with annoyance. "What is it, human?" The Admiral droned. JAX pointed at the holographic map, at the swirling crimson vortex we called the Maw of Ruin. "Right," he said. "I've been looking at your data. Even the survivor testimonies you wrote off as psychosis. You're all wrong about them. It's not a hive mind. It's a broadcast. One big signal telling all the little pieces what to do. And it's coming from right there." He tapped a coordinate deep inside the maw. "I'm going to go there, and I'm going to kill the thing that's in charge." For a second, there was silence. Then, the room erupted in bitter, tired laughter. The idea was absurd. A single thing in charge? A king or queen of the scourge? It was a children's story. Millennia of data said otherwise. The Admiral waved him off. "Your biological need for a narrative is noted, human. We deal in logic here. Now please leave." JAX just shrugged. "Okay," he said, and walked out. We thought that was the end of it. Another amusing, pitiful display of human navit. But JAX didn't stop. We saw him in the scrapyards pulling parts from decommissioned warships. He traded his species' strange stimulants for shield modulators on the black market. He was building a ship, a tiny, one-man vessel that was an ugly mix of a dozen different technologies. We watched with morbid curiosity, like watching an asylum inmate build a rocket to the moon. He downloaded every star chart we had, especially the forbidden ones. And one day, without a word, he was gone. His ugly little ship, which he'd named the High-Risk Gambit, vanished, heading straight for the Maw of Ruin. The official report listed him as lost, presumed self-decommissioned. Another footnote. Another dead human. Months passed. The war ground on. We lost the Anahita system. We lost the binary stars of Cygnus. The front line crept closer. JAX was forgotten, a strange little anecdote about the primate who thought he could punch a god. Then, things started to get weird. IT started small. A scourge raiding fleet about to overwhelm a colony just stopped. Its ships went dormant, drifting lifelessly in space. A week later, during a full-scale assault, the scourge coordination shattered mid-battle. Their ships started firing on each other. Some just flew straight into the nearest star. The Federation fleet, for the first time in centuries, didn't just survive. They won. They annihilated the enemy. Panic gripped the Grand Conclave. This had to be a trap, a new strategy to lure us into a false sense of security. Our logicians ran simulations day and night, but they could find no pattern. The enemy's behavior had become random, illogical, and that was more terrifying than their relentless efficiency had ever been. For 1,000 years, we knew our enemy. Now, we had no idea what we were fighting. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then, a signal cut through the silence. An old Federation emergency code, broadcast from a wreck of a ship that appeared on the edge of the Sol system. Its transponder identified it as the High-Risk Gambit. The message was short. JAX was requesting to address the Council. We expected a madman or a ghost. He walked into the chamber alone. He wore the same scavenged armor, now blackened and melted in places. He looked older, but more than anything, he looked profoundly tired. It was a bone-deep weariness etched on his face. He was carrying a heavy sack. He walked to the center of the great hall, and with a grunt, emptied its contents onto the floor. It rolled to a stop. It was a head, grotesque, immense, and clearly severed from something vast. Crystalline horns pulsed with a faint, dying light. Even in death, the psychic pressure that radiated from it was so immense that several representatives fell to their knees. A god, and it was dead. The conclave was utterly silent. 1,000 years of strategy, of accepted truth, shattered. The unwinnable war hadn't been an unstoppable force of nature. It was just a monster. A very, very big monster. And this lone, fragile, short-lived primate had gone and killed it. He looked up at our stunned, speechless faces. The faces of beings who commanded armadas, now staring like children at the Boogerman's corpse. That's when he spoke. The words that ended a war. "So, can we get this over with?" I'm tired. In that moment, we finally understood. We had studied humans for 80 years and learned nothing. We saw their short lives and called them ephemeral. We saw their emotions and called them unstable. We saw their individuality and called it chaos. We were wrong. That chaos was adaptability. That emotion was fuel. And in their short, fleeting lives, they burned with a fury that could devour gods. The galaxy learned a new and terrifying truth that day. Never, ever underestimate a tired human. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and let me know what you thought in the comments below. The universe is full of stories, and we're here to tell them. Thanks for watching.